I would like to begin my speech by assessing a couple movies that most of you guys should be familiar with. And out of these three films, which one would you feel most comfortable watching with a small child? Poltergeist, a horror movie focusing on a menacing, evil, demonic spirit following children. Jaws, an action adventure movie following a gigantic shark consuming beachgoers. Or Frozen, a Disney princess movie that follows sisters and focuses on love and bravery, and at its worst has a mean prince and an evil ice monster named Marshmallow. Well, I know my obvious choice, but the answer isn't quite clear just reading the ratings assigned by the Motion Picture Association of America. This being the PG rating that all of them have. This leads me to my speech. Today in my speech, I will focus on the issues surrounding the Motion Picture Association of America ratings. These are the misguided, hypocritical, and often contradictory ratings, and the censorship conflicts that they cause. I'm credible to discuss this topic due to my hours of research and also being a consumer of the movie industry. I also have plenty of family members that depend on these ratings to raise their children. Now I will discuss the information surrounding the problem of the poor MPAA ratings, the causes, and potentially the solutions. For the remainder of my speech, I will be referring to the Motion Picture Association of America by MPAA. Let's begin by discussing the problems of the MPAA ratings. My first main point is the problem that is the rating system. In this section of my speech, I will focus on the history of the MPAA and the issues surrounding the ratings. The history of the MPAA begins in 1968 following the end of the Hays Code, which was the first rating system in the U.S. It had strict restrictions on sex, religion, profanity, and dancing. However, these strict restrictions didn't last long. And as profanity increased, the Motion Picture Association decided it would be best to have a new board of volunteers and a new rating system instead of having the government involved. The MPAA was and still is led by a group of parents who are not allowed to have any other affiliation with the movie industry and all have a child under the age of 21. The MPAA ratings were meant to serve as a guide and a warning and less as a restriction like the Hays Codes. The MPAA ratings created in 1968, G, R, and X, remained the same until 1984 with the creation of PG-13, which was created in response to Steven Spielberg. His films that he was creating were too vulgar for PG, but not necessarily vulgar enough for R. These include Gremlins and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. The current rating systems are as follows. G, appropriate for general audiences. PG, parental guidance is suggested. PG-13, parental guidance is strongly suggested for those under the age of 13. R, restricted to individuals, those 17 and older, unless accompanied by an adult. And NC-17, strictly restricted to those 18 and above. This was covered in the article, The History of MPAA Ratings, written by Michelle Donnelly in January of 2015. Although it is evident that the MPAA was originally created with good intentions to warn parents and viewers of potentially upsetting content, the ratings became quickly contradictory and misguided. Even parents suddenly didn't agree with them. According to a study, a validity test of movie, television, and video games ratings conducted by David Walsh and Douglas Gentile in 2013, when parents were shown a series of films, they only agreed on the ratings 37% of the time. In a separate study, Parental Attitudes About Cigarette Smoking and Alcohol Use in the Motion Picture Association of America Rating System by Megan R. Longacre, conducted in 2009, 40% of parents agreed that the ratings were non-informative and did not allow them to make a correct decision. These ratings are also guilty of causing the problem of unintentional censorship. A recent article titled Overrated, Disciplinary Power in the MPAA by Michael Newlinger in 2013 addresses that the NC-17 today is synonymous with economic loss, since the MPAA is so tightly wound with theater chains and the largest DVD distributions. When an NC-17 movie is created, it is very rarely released. Although the MPAA rejects all claims of censorship, employing a rating that prohibits movies to reach an audience is a clear form of censorship. Now that we've discussed the problems with the MPAA ratings, we will discuss the causes of these problems. My second main point will discuss the causes that led to the MPAA ratings being misleading and uninformative. There are four main causes that attribute to the invalidity of the MPAA's ratings. The first of these would be the use of PG-13. The intended use of PG-13 is to suggest a movie may be a little intense for young viewers, but has now become the go-to for every movie since it'll appeal to an older audience, but theaters are allowed to show it to everyone. This has caused wild inconsistencies in PG-13 films. According to Dr. Peggy Drexler in her article, The Problem with PG-13 Rated Films, written in 2013, addresses that some films' mature themes translate to just a subtle innuendo that'll fly over a kid's head, and others an entire mass destruction of a football field. There are plenty of movies that contain the amount of violence present in our movie, but are rated PG-13. For the purpose of my speech, I will spare the gory details, but if you have watched these films, you know what I'm referring to. The Dark Knight and Live Free and Die Hard. There are movies on the other side of this argument as well. Movies rated PG-13 that are really PG at most. These include Star Wars, The Force Awakens, and Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. The second cause would be rating discrepancies over time. As I mentioned previously, PG-13 ratings are wildly inconsistent. PG-13 ratings have become the new R, PG, and the bridge between them. This pushes PG into the rating that the G once held. This can be seen by viewing the top grossing G-rated films. Mary Poppins, Annie, The Wizard of Oz, the top grossing non-animated G films, were all created before the creation of PG-13. Even the top grossing G animated films, The Lion King, Toy Story 2 and 3, Finding Nemo, Cars, and Aladdin, have all occurred a decade or longer ago. This was addressed in the article, What Happened to the G Rating, by Kelly Tuttle in 2018. There are very few G-rated movies being produced. Well, let me rephrase that. There are very few movies being produced with the G label. However, given these movies were produced 10, 15 years ago, they would all be labeled G. Some could definitely argue that these movies are simply become more violent. So, please allow me to compare a few films and try to decide for yourself if one of these movies is substantially worse than the other. Finding Nemo versus Finding Dory. Toy Story 3 versus Toy Story 4. Bambi versus Wall-E. Pocahontas versus Moana. And finally, Aladdin versus the Aladdin remake. The list can continue, but the point is clear. An older movie can be rated G, even though it may be the same level as inappropriate or traumatic as a modern film. Or, even more so, have you seen Bambi? However, the MPAA will still rate a modern princess movie or a movie about a cartoon fish PG. These are completely contradictory. All these movies are also rated G or the equivalent of G in Japan, Germany, England, and most of the countries these movies were released in. This leads me to my third cause. This would be the drastic differences between the MPAA ratings and the rating systems in other countries. Let's take the BBFC rating system for example. The BBFC is the rating system in England, and although it of course has made a few controversial decisions, is more universally agreed upon than the MPAA. There are a few big differences between many ratings. These include the Grand Budapest Hotel, the MPAA rated R, the BBFC rated 15, meaning it is suitable for those 15 and above. Birdman, the MPAA rated R, the BBFC rated 15. Finally, The Other Woman, the BBFC rated 12, and the MPAA rated the film R. This was addressed in the article, A Comparative Analysis of Ratings, Classification, and Censorships in Selected Countries Around the World, written by Jerry Brand in 2002. Finally, the fourth cause is that regional discrepancies can cause moral discrepancies. Parents in the MPAA from the South will often rate a language higher, while those on the West Coast will rate violence higher. Parents from the South will often likely rate a movie higher the main characters of a sexual orientation other than heterosexual, or of religion other than Christian. This can result in the censoring of certain beliefs. Now that we've discussed the problems with the MPAA, the causes of the problems, I would like to discuss the solutions that would be most beneficial to solving these problems. My third and final point will address the solutions to the inconsistent, uninformative, and censoring ratings created by the MPAA. The MPAA is a necessary evil, and that should not be completely abolished, but it should be reformed. There are 4 reforms that would help the MPAA become more inclusive, less inconsistent and hypocritical, and would help prevent unintentional censorship. Many of these solutions are addressed in the article, Restricted Audiences Only, Censorship and Movie Ratings, written by Stacey Nichols in 2016. The first reform would be to put restrictions on giving a movie a higher rating simply because it has a different sexuality or religion that one may disagree with. The MPAA should also require a larger diversity of race, ethnicities, and sexual orientation on the rating board to prevent this issue. It was stated in the GS for Gold published by the MPAA that in 2018, at the time of publication, all 9 of their members were Caucasian, married, and currently living in California, although they had lived in other states previously. The next reform would be to elaborate on the descriptions given to movie ratings. The warning, extended intense violence and frightening images, should not be the IMDb warning for both The Conjuring and The Hobbit. I mean, let's compare these 2 films. Look at the covers. This warning should not and cannot be applied to both of these and give a fair description. The third reform would be to create a universal rating scale, including the cursing, context of cursing, sex, and violence present in a movie. This would help combat the PG-13 PG safe space that the MPAA is likely to choose instead of G or R. This scale could be used by all MPAA volunteers, regardless of region and age, to create a non-biased rating. While a version of this already exists, it should go into more detail. A final solution would be to have an audience of older children and teenagers, or even young adults, watch a movie that has been viewed and rated by the MPAA and provide their opinion on the rating that has been given. Times are changing. Something shameful when a 40-year-old mother with a child is simply daily life for a 14-year-old. A teenager will know best if a movie will cause them nightmares, if an innuendo goes over their head, or language is worse than what they hear in high school. I will now come to the conclusion for my speech. Today we have discussed the problems found in the MPAA movie ratings, the causes of these problems, and finally, the potential solutions. We've determined that although the MPAA has good intentions, many ratings seem inconsistent and can have negative impacts, such as allowing uninformed decisions or creating censorship. I conclude this speech by urging you to do further research beyond reading the ratings and the warnings on the back of the box, if you're concerned about you or someone else watching a movie. Because if you just look at the rating, you may let a toddler watch Jaws.